Welcome to the Software Showcase, brought to you live from sunny Orlando, Florida. I am Mark Stedman, Vice President of Information Technology with Wycliffe Associates, and joining me in the studio today are Matt Gerber and Dan Paris. Today is a special broadcast of the Software Showcase because we need to talk to you about something important that has happened recently, and that is the breach of LastPass. So, guys, what is LastPass?
LastPass is a password manager. So it's a thing that you can use to use complex passwords in places that you otherwise wouldn't be able to remember them.
Yeah, so all these months I've been telling you guys, I'm not going to put all my passwords into something and then it's going to get hacked. Is that what we're sitting in today?
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah. So if you've watched any software showcases in the past about security, you know that we highly recommend using a password manager. And unfortunately today, we're here to let you know that the one that we recommend and also use internally, LastPass, has had a breach. And that breach occurred in August. LastPass was not fully honest with the public about what had happened. And in December, they let us all know that essentially all of our password vaults, all of our encrypted password vaults, have been leaked out into the public. Yes, big thumbs down, 0 stars out of 5, do not recommend. So what we're going to talk about today is why you should still use a password manager despite having this experience, how you need to be thinking about your passwords if you have been using LastPass, and again, why we still think you should use a password manager. So let's start with what it means that our vaults are out there. What do you guys think that means?
Well, it doesn't necessarily mean run around and panic. It doesn't mean that somebody has all of your passwords right now. However, it means that if somebody really targeted you and they put enough resources behind it, they could eventually crack your vault.
Yeah.
And you have to assume that given unlimited amounts of time, eventually somebody will get at your passwords. But unless you're the CEO of a big company or a known crypto millionaire, you have some time, most likely.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the way that passwords are stored. So in LastPass, you have a bunch of passwords. Those are all encrypted into one big file. It's pretty strong encryption. But the key for the decryption is your master password. So that means that the strength of your encryption is related to the strength of your master password. So what's the danger zone here for master passwords in terms of length and complexity? Where should we be worried, Matt?
Well, we recently changed our corporate minimum to 12. You were able to use fewer before, which yes. I know somebody who did.
Yes, it has been reported.
Yes. So it makes it much more difficult, like exponentially more difficult to crack. And Dan can talk about the details of why every character you add makes it even more complicated to decrypt.
Yeah.
But 12 characters and at least 3 of the 4 sets of lowercase, uppercase, number, special character, then you're going to be pretty safe.
Yeah, fairly safe. Dan, do you have a recommendation on password length for master passwords?
For a LastPass master password, I would generally recommend, now this is going to sound kind of crazy, something like 24 or more.
Okay.
And that's primarily because I would recommend something like a passphrase,
yeah.
which would be a combination of words, possibly separated by spaces or dashes or periods or even numbers,
right.
Which would give you a lot of length. It's also going to put you into a place where somebody who wanted to break it would have to brute force it.
Yeah.
And it's really expensive, generally speaking, to brute force passwords.
Yeah. So let's make a couple of recommendations. One, if you're going to use a passphrase and you're a Christian, and I know you are because you work at WA, you probably don't want to just pick a Bible verse, okay? Mm-hmm. So what you want to avoid is taking a passphrase that's like something out of a book or a Shakespeare play or a Bible verse, something well-known, because the way that somebody's going to attack a vault is they're not going to start with A and then B and then C. They're going to start with like well-known word lists, and then they're probably going to look at maybe some things like maybe trying all the verses of the Bible or things like that. So you probably need something a bit more random than that.
Yeah.
But the passphrase is a good idea because it's easier to remember.
Yeah, that's the big reason I would recommend a passphrase.
Yeah.
Is a lot of times they're nonsensical and so they're funny, and so
right.
It's a little easier to remember something ridiculous like correct horse battery staple, to use a famous example. Don't use that one.
Right. Don't use that. Don't use that.
But that's a funny thing to remember, and it's easy. So despite the fact that appeared in a comic, I think like 12 years ago,
yeah.
I still remember it. Yeah. So things like that are really helpful to do to keep from having to remember exclamation point, question 7, lowercase n, whatever.
How did you know?
So if you have been using LastPass and your master password was on the shorter end, you should probably think about starting to change some of your passwords. All right, so let's talk a little bit about priority. Now, in my case, in my vault, I have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of passwords, okay? So it will take me weeks to get through all of them, and frankly, I'm not gonna do it. I'll just admit I'm not gonna change all of them. So my priority list was I started with changing all of my email passwords, including my WA Active Directory. And the reason is because think about how many accounts are secured by your email. So how many things do you log into, and when you say I forgot my password, it's got a email me a reset. So you really need to protect that second key, which is your email. What do you guys think is the next priority after changing your email passwords?
I would recommend accounts that are financially or medically or personally sensitive,
Yeah.
that especially do not have multi-factor authentication on them already.
Yeah, great point. Great point.
That would be my next target. And then the target after that would be those that do have multi-factor authentication. So banks, obviously, like you said, email is critical because so many services are going to reset your password through your email.
Yeah.
Make sure you have multi-factor authentication or two-factor authentication enabled on your email account. If your provider doesn't offer it, consider moving to another. And then banks, investments, things that could cost you, financially. That would be
Right.
Those are big deal. Make sure you have multi-factor on those as well, and then you can start moving to. And then I would say you also want to move to anything where if you had reused your master password on a site, that's one that you need to change so fast.
Yes.
And never reuse your master password anywhere because passwords get leaked all the time.
Yeah.
And most, like you said, most attackers would use a list of passwords first. That list has got every password that's ever been cracked from all of time on it. It's hundreds of thousands of passwords long.
Yeah.
So are you telling me that when someone tries to crack your vault, they're not sitting there trying one more password at a time? How does that work exactly?
No, they're not. The most advanced methods involve supercomputers. That's rare. That would be like state actors, like terrorist state actors. They'll be using that. Governments, that's what I mean, yeah.
The U.S. government.
Those sorts of things would be
Not all in the same
Those
category.
are separate. Those are separate, but yeah.
But anyway, the most sophisticated attacks would be supercomputers. No one here is probably vulnerable enough to need, to be subject to that. The next most sophisticated would be cloud attacks or attacks that use a GPU, like a graphics card, like you might use for video gaming. Those are actually remarkably good at trying passwords really fast, and as fast as billions of passwords attempts at a second, tries a second. So thankfully, because of the way that the master password works with LastPass, it slows that down quite a good deal.
Right.
And so, but yeah, that's how you start with lists. You start with common words. You start with patterns like the first letter capitalized, the last character is a number. So you got your capital word, number passwords. Those are going to be guessed pretty easily.
So if it can guess billions every second or every couple of seconds, that's why it's just a matter of time before eventually it just gets it out of chance.
Correct. And also just that as technology advances, it becomes cheaper and cheaper to try billions of attempts a second. So.
Yeah, so we have to assume that our vaults will all be floating out on the dark web now forever. Essentially forever.
Not anything that we're updating or changing, but that point in time.
Right.
Around September-ish.
Yeah, exactly.
Whatever your passwords were then.
In August.
That's what people will theoretically eventually have access to.
Yeah, that's why our recommendation is to really think seriously about changing passwords. Now, let's talk a little bit about changing your master password. Don't misunderstand us. If you change your master password today, it provides no additional security for the vaults that are already leaked.
Right. Yes, they have a snapshot in time.
Right. The other thing is, even if you have 2FA on your LastPass, which I think is required, it doesn't help because they're not going to use the client to log into your LastPass. They're going to just crack your vault's encryption. So all that to say, the cow is out of the barn. What you need to do is think about changing passwords for high-value accounts at minimum, and then maybe go through your vault and look at accounts that you think might matter. So one thing I did is I looked at my vault and I looked at the most recently used list. I ordered, I took it in order from most recent. and started working down from there. Well, the ones I use every day are probably the highest value, and then I got out to about a week ago. That's as far as I've gotten so far. I've got more work to do because I only log into TurboTax once a year. So, I actually did that one because I thought of it. I went and did my Intuit accounts and stuff. But
Yeah, I did have one thought. One password or place that I didn't mention that that I might actually have a really big impact at WA, but not necessarily in broader context, would be that the pieces of data that were leaked include unencrypted URLs for websites.
Right.
So whoever has this information, and we don't currently know who it is, whoever has this information has a list of the websites that you have passwords for. So if you're in a sensitive context, you may want to especially secure those accounts and any places that those accounts might have reused passwords. And then also consider other mitigating measures to think about what if these sensitive sites in your context do I need to do to try to cover my tracks a bit if that's the case for you, and you'll have to make those determinations on your own.
Yeah, the other thing it means is that, if I've got a list this is Matt Gerber's, list of websites that he uses, I now know who to phish him with. I know that you bank at this bank and you do your brokerage at this place. So I'm not going to bother phishing you with every bank. I'm going to just keep hammering you with your bank. And so be aware that you may see an uptick in phishing. I don't know if that's happening yet or not, but at some point you may begin to see an uptick in being phished for sites that you use. So as always, watching the Know Before training, being familiar with what phishing scams look like and whatnot is always a good idea. Have that sort of security posture that just assumes every email that comes in is probably trying to take advantage of you.
Yeah, that's right. If you get an email from Amazon saying, hey, you need to reset your password because we have a $15 credit to refund you, it's probably not real. And even if it is, don't click the link. Just go to Amazon.com and see if it shows up there too.
Yeah, yeah. Also, if you get a message to call Amazon or to call PayPal, don't, because that's not their number.
Yeah, you can look up their real phone number and then call them.
They don't have phone numbers. Yeah, in order to get Amazon on the phone, you actually have to log into the website and then click on please contact me, and then they call you. They don't have numbers. I think all their numbers are gone. So
cool.
Okay, anything else we want to touch on?
Yeah, I just want to clarify that we don't regret having a password manager. It still was safer than not.
Yeah.
It's still safer than you just storing all of your passwords in Chrome. The odds of your password, again, getting cracked are low, and it's going to take a long time. So we just want to clarify that it was still the right decision, and we are still going to use password managers going forward.
Yeah.
We are currently waiting to see if LastPass fixes the things that allowed this to happen. We're also talking to other vendors. So
yeah. So if you're using LastPass now, feel free to talk to us. We're happy to have conversations with you. We're not telling you to jump ship today. We're doing some evaluation. We're in the middle of looking at other vendors. Any of the password managers that allow you to store your vault in the cloud so you can use it on your phone and your computer and your wife's phone and your wife's computer, that's our scenario, they all potentially can have their vaults leaked, right?
they're high-value targets.
It is a high-value target, yeah. So that's just endemic to that model. Now there's other models where you can basically store the vault in your own device and not put it in the cloud at all. Of course, that's hard to use it on more than one device, so that's a challenge. There are some that allow you to store your vault, let's say in a Google Drive that you manage. I don't know why I would feel like I'm better at managing a Google Drive security than LastPass is managing their cloud security. It's probably 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. I don't know. Yeah. I don't know. Do your own math, I guess. That doesn't feel any more secure. So I think our recommendation remains the same. The only way to manage a complex digital life that has hundreds of passwords is to use some kind of password management, and one of these password managers is probably still the best way to go. So now you're into how do I encrypt it well? That's the long, complex master passwords like we talked about. 2FA is still worth it. And stay tuned. We'll send out some email or maybe even do another brief software showcase in a couple weeks to tell you where we've landed in terms of what vendor to pick. But yeah, I wish we had better news. I don't think that it's not time to panic, but again, if you have a short master password, I think you should get to work changing at least your high-value passwords. I wouldn't wait too long.
So out of curiosity, for those who are wondering, how exactly did they pull off the hack?
So Mark mentioned phishing earlier, that this is likely to result in increased phishing attempts because people have more targeted information. You may remember from your Know Before training that is spear phishing. But that's how they got into LastPass, was phishing. That's how they broke in actually twice. They phished 2 different employees at LastPass.
Yeah.
One, they gained some engineering information, and then they used that engineering information to phish another employee and gain more access, which is how they eventually got a hold of the vaults.
Sounds like LastPass needs to roll out Know Before for their employees.
Yeah.
I agree.
There are clearly, yes, there are a number of issues that LastPass needs to be held accountable for, and it's probably likely that we will stop using their paid products. I don't know. So anyway, Mr. Producer, do we have any questions?
None today.
Okay, no questions, which means we've answered all the questions, or no one's watching. Either way, that's fine. Thanks so much for tuning in. This is a serious issue. Do not hesitate to reach out to the help desk if you want clarity or you want to just have a conversation. Any of the 3 of us would be happy to get on the phone. It looks like there may be one question from David, the producer.
There are questions, but the ones that are already been answered, but they're good to reiterate. So are password managers safe? Is there a big risk when such a site is hacked? And then the second one is kind of like are you saying we need to change our LastPass master password or only if it's less than 12 characters?
Okay, good questions. Yeah, we continue to say a password manager is a good pick. Should you change your master password? The answer is yes, you should change your master password. However, that is not enough to protect the sites that have already been leaked. So, I had a 17-character master password. I went ahead and changed it. Yeah. I just feel like should it get leaked again, I at least want to make them have to calculate another new password. So, but I also am understanding, the vault that's out there, it's encrypted with whatever the password was back in August. So you need to do more than that. But yes, this would be a good time to update your master password. Regardless of the length, it would be a good time to redo your master password.
Yes, if you have a LastPass vault, WA or personal, change your master password. Step 1. Step 2, change all the high-value targets that Dan mentioned.
Yeah, yes.
Not you should, but you definitely should. Not like it was a suggestion, but.
Yeah, I would get to work on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would get to work on it.
Yep.
Any other questions?
Yeah, actually one we had talked about while we were still doing, that we didn't say on live, are passwords that are system generated good to use? Like, for example, where you get to go in your Apple Vault and have it randomly generate one for you.
Yeah.
I would say that depends. If you're using something like LastPass has a password generator, Apple has a password generator. Lots of places have password generators. If those things are, if you trust the source and those things are truly random or at least close to truly random, then yeah, they're good. Now, when you say system generated though, this is like a password that you get emailed. That needs to be changed immediately because that password, you can, this is not entirely true anymore, but you can more or less consider email like a postcard. It's going through the mail, so it's reasonably secure, but it's also the back of a postcard.
Could be, yeah. So it's sitting in your mailbox. Yeah. Even after you delete it, it's still there, and yeah.
Yeah, so those passwords that were generated by the thing that you're creating an account on, change those passwords as soon as they get sent to you and you log in for the first time.
Right, yeah, for sure. Okay, anything else? All right, thanks everybody for tuning in. Thank you, Dan and Matt, for being here. It's nice to have you guys in the studio. We do miss having Glenn, my all-around great guy and right-hand man, but he is actually at work doing other things. I think he said he was changing his password this afternoon. I'm not sure. But anyway, we'll see you all next time. Thanks so much.